My mom didn't cry. She didn't hesitate. She didn't even stutter. She just left a voicemail that shattered 23 years of my life in 9 cold words. You're out. Don't come back. We're moving on without you. I stared at my phone, heart racing, breath stuck, waiting for the part where she'd say it was a joke. She didn't. So I texted her one word, okay. What she didn't know was that I had information, leverage, and a plan she never saw coming. By the next morning, there were 46 missed calls, frantic messages, and a voicemail from their lawyer saying, "We have a serious problem." And suddenly they weren't kicking me out anymore. They were begging me to come back. Stay with us. This amazing story will leave you speechless. Before we get started, hit like, share, and subscribe, and drop your location in the comments. I didn't notice the missed call at first. I was halfway through folding laundry, music playing quietly in the background, when my phone buzzed on the dresser. I assumed it was another notification or some random message. But when I glanced down and saw one new voicemail from Mom, something in my chest tightened. She never left voicemails. She preferred long, dramatic speeches in person. A voicemail meant she wanted control. A voicemail meant she made sure she could talk without interruption. A voicemail meant she didn't care what I had to say back. I pressed play. Her voice came through sharp, cold, and merciless. You're out. Don't come back. We're moving on without you. No explanation. No hesitation. Just a sentence delivered like a verdict. For a moment, everything around me froze. The sound of the washing machine faded, the music stopped mattering, and the air suddenly felt heavier. My own mother, my own blood, had just cut me out of her life like I was a stranger who brought nothing but inconvenience. I replayed the message, thinking maybe I misheard her. Maybe there was more. Maybe she'd paused before adding, "We need space," or "We'll talk later." But no. The message was short and final, like she'd practiced it. Like she'd waited for the moment she could say it without guilt. The part that stung the most wasn't even the words. It was how calm she sounded. How confident. How certain I wouldn't fight back. I sat on the edge of my bed, phone still in my hand, staring at the blank wall in front of me. My first instinct was to cry. My second was to scream. But neither came. Instead, a strange calm washed over me. Not peace, just clarity. They had finally said out loud what they'd been hinting at for years. The criticisms. The silent treatments. The comments about how I never did enough, how I wasn't like my siblings, how I should be grateful they kept me around. This voicemail wasn't a surprise. It was a confirmation. I opened my messages, typed one word, okay. Then I hit send and placed my phone face down. If they thought I would beg for forgiveness or chase after them like always, they were wrong. This time I wasn't breaking. I wasn't pleading. I wasn't giving them the satisfaction of seeing me fall apart. They wanted me gone? Fine. They had no idea what wall they'd just slammed into. And they definitely didn't expect what I was about to set in motion. Growing up in my family never felt like growing up in a home. It felt more like walking through a maze where every turn had a new rule, a new expectation, a new reminder that I wasn't enough. My mom perfected the art of conditional love. Warm when I obeyed, cold when I questioned, cruel when I tried to stand on my own. She called it guidance. I learned later it was control. She decided what I wore, who I talked to, what activities I joined, even how I felt. Any emotion that didn't serve her narrative was dismissed as exaggeration. Any success I achieved was credited to her hard work raising me. My siblings always seemed to fit the mold better. They were louder, brighter, more willing to perform for her approval. I was the quiet one, the observer, the one who asked why, more often than she liked. And in my family, asking why was rebellion. She'd look at me with that disappointed sigh she'd perfected over the years and say, "You're making things difficult for no reason. Why can't you just listen?" Listening was survival. But it was never enough. No matter how perfectly I followed the unwritten rules, there was always something I failed at, something she held over me as proof I needed them. The older I got, the more the manipulation evolved. Suddenly, everything became transactional. If I wanted help with tuition, I had to attend every family gathering without complaining. If I wanted a place to stay, I had to agree with every decision she made. If I wanted peace, I had to sacrifice my voice. At first, I convinced myself it was normal. Parents help. Children compromise. Families work together. But ours wasn't working together. It was me bending until I almost snapped just so she could maintain her illusion of control. Even small disagreements spiraled into elaborate punishments. Silent treatment, guilt trips, emotional lectures lasting hours. She'd rewrite events to make herself the victim, accusing me of disrespect, ungratefulness, or embarrassing the family. My opinions weren't allowed. My boundaries were labeled attitude. My independence was treated like betrayal. And every time I tried to pull back, she tightened her grip with money, housing, or emotional threats. For years I believed I needed them. I believed I owed them. But deep down I knew the truth. They needed someone to blame, someone to control, someone to elevate themselves above. And I was the easiest target. Her voicemail didn't happen overnight. It was the final chapter of a story she'd been writing for years. A story where she expected me to stay small. She had no idea I'd grown far beyond her reach. The funny thing about families like mine is this. They never kick you out because you did something terrible. They kick you out because you stopped playing your part. And that's exactly what happened. For years I was the designated fixer, the quiet mediator, the one who absorbed the chaos so everyone else could pretend we were a perfect family. But the moment I started to step back, the moment I began building a life that didn't revolve around them, they panicked. Independence was the one thing they couldn't control. They needed me dependent. They needed me available. They needed me small. It all started when my aunt passed away and left something unexpected behind. A trust account with my name on it. Not theirs. My money she had intended for my future, separate from the family. At first I didn't think much of it. I was grateful, of course, but I didn't flaunt it or bring it up. I kept quiet, thinking it would avoid problems. But secrets have a way of leaking through cracks, and it didn't take long before my mom found out. After that, everything changed. Suddenly she asked more questions about my finances, pushed for family decisions, and insisted she needed access for emergencies. Translation: she wanted control. But I said no. For the first time in my life I said no. That refusal lit a fuse I didn't realize was already burning. The atmosphere shifted. Conversations turned sharper. Comments became accusations. They whispered among themselves, forming plans, deciding how to handle me. I wasn't cooperating anymore, and in their world that made me a threat. And when I didn't agree to help with the family house deal, when I wouldn't sign the documents they tried slipping under the radar, their anger grew. They needed my signature. They needed my legal presence. They needed me to blindly trust them. But I asked questions. I asked too many questions. And people who want to manipulate you hate being questioned. The turning point was the night I confronted them about the inconsistencies in the paperwork. The way they avoided eye contact told me everything. They were hiding something, and my involvement wasn't optional. It was required. When I refused again, when I said I'd take the documents to a lawyer, the room went dead silent. That was the moment they realized I could stop everything they were planning. And that's why the voicemail came. Not because they didn't want me, but because they needed me, and I finally stopped letting them use me. They didn't remove me from the family. They removed themselves from my control. When I sent that one-word text, okay. I don't think even I understood what it meant in that moment. It wasn't surrender. It wasn't defeat. It was something far more dangerous to them. Acceptance. Acceptance that I didn't need their approval. Acceptance that I no longer feared their silence. Acceptance that I was finally stepping out of the role they'd trapped me in. For the first time in years, my mind felt clear, as if someone had opened a window in a room I didn't realize was suffocating me. Normally, I would have called back immediately, voice trembling, begging for an explanation. That's the version of me they were counting on. The version who tried to fix everything even when I wasn't the one who broke it. But this time the phone stayed on the dresser. I didn't rush to defend myself. I didn't rush to correct whatever lie they'd convinced themselves of. I just let their words sit there. And something unexpected happened. The panic wasn't mine. It was theirs. I packed slowly that night. Not because I had nowhere to go, but because I finally realized I had choices. I folded clothes deliberately, cleared my drawers, placed my documents in a folder I kept hidden. The same folder they didn't know existed. Every movement felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. The silence in the room didn't feel empty anymore. It felt peaceful. Freeing. I wasn't running away. I was walking out with dignity for the first time. As I zipped my suitcase, I glanced at my phone again. No apology. No explanation. Just silence, the kind they used as punishment. Except now it didn't sting. It confirmed everything I needed to know. They expected me to break. To crawl back. To collapse under guilt the way I always had. Instead, I lifted my suitcase and walked out without looking back. My okay wasn't an answer. It was a warning. And they had no idea how much that one word was about to cost them. The funny thing about people who think they control you is this. They never imagine you might have something they need more than they need you. And my family, especially my mom, had completely forgotten the one thing that shifted everything in my favor. It wasn't money. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't even the trust my aunt left me. It was something far more powerful, legal authority. Authority they had given me willingly years ago, never thinking it would matter. It started with my grandparents' property. It wasn't a mansion, just a piece of land with a little house, passed down for generations. My grandparents trusted me more than anyone else in the family. I was young, responsible, and unlike the others, I didn't treat inheritance like a prize. Before they passed, they added me to everything. Co-owner on the title, secondary signer on the trust, emergency executor. At the time it felt overwhelming, like a responsibility too big for me. But they insisted. You're the only one who thinks long-term, my grandfather said. I didn't understand what he meant then. Today I do. My mother, however, assumed that because I never bragged about it, the role didn't matter. To her, authority only counts if she sees it. So she filed paperwork, made plans, and mapped out a renovation project for the inherited property, all without checking the ownership details. All without realizing she didn't have the right to move a single brick without my signature. And that's where everything began to unravel. I discovered their plan by accident, a contractor's estimate left on the kitchen table. They were planning to sell the land, use the funds for another project, and pocket whatever remained. They just needed one small thing. My legal approval. The approval I'd already quietly refused when the documents didn't match what the lawyer later confirmed. Their family investment wasn't an investment at all. It was a transfer of generational wealth into my mother's hands alone. And here was the part they didn't expect. When my aunt passed away, her trust automatically linked with my grandparents' property because they'd structured it years before. Which meant that the moment I stepped away, everything froze. Legally. Financially. All transactions halted until I signed off. So when they kicked me out, they didn't just remove me. They accidentally removed the only person who could make their entire plan possible. They thought I was powerless. They forgot I was the lock holding everything together. And now that I'd stepped back, everything they built was about to collapse. While I spent the night packing quietly, my family spent it celebrating. I know because people talk, especially when drama tastes sweeter than dessert. Screenshots started coming in before midnight. First from a cousin, then a neighbor, then someone I barely remembered from childhood who still followed my mother's Facebook page. There she was, smiling, glowing, posing for pictures like she'd just won a prize. A fresh start, the caption read. Sometimes letting go is necessary. He tagged my siblings. They added heart emojis. Someone commented, proud of you. The whole thing looked like a victory parade. But the celebration wasn't about joy. It was about control. My mother had always cared more about being seen as right than actually being right. Public image was her battlefield, and she never posted anything unless it served a purpose. The photos weren't for family. They were for the audience she needed to validate her. To show the world she was strong, decisive, unshakable. And removing me? That was her performance of power. Her way of declaring to everyone that she was in charge, that she didn't need me, that she was the hero in a story she was inventing in real time. What she didn't know was that her celebration exposed everything. Every picture had clues, contractors in the background, papers on the table, boxes labeled with dates. She didn't realize how much her pride revealed. Her smile hid panic lines around her eyes. My siblings' laughter looked forced. And in one photo behind the wine glasses, I saw a familiar folder. The property plans she'd been hiding from me. She didn't notice it, but I did. Her own pride betrayed her more than any confession could have. Later that night, a friend messaged me. They're having a whole gathering. Talking about the new chapter, without you. She included a voice note. I didn't play it. I didn't need to hear their words to know the truth. Their celebration wasn't confidence. It was relief. Relief they thought would last. Relief based on the assumption that I would fade quietly from their lives. But relief built on ignorance is temporary. And nothing is more fragile than false certainty. They thought pushing me out meant they were free. They didn't realize they'd just severed the only lifeline holding their plans together. Let them toast. Let them laugh. Let them pretend victory. Morning was coming. And morning would change everything. The place I went that night wasn't glamorous. It wasn't planned. It wasn't even comfortable. It was a tiny studio apartment my friend Lena used for storage, with mismatched furniture, a flickering lamp, and a couch that had seen better decades. But when I walked in and set my suitcase down, it felt like something I hadn't felt in years. Mine. No eyes watching me. No footsteps pacing aggressively downstairs. No voices demanding explanations. Just space. Just silence. Just me. At first, that silence felt strange. Heavy. I sat on the edge of the couch, hands resting on my knees, waiting for some kind of emotional collapse that never came. Instead, I felt suspended. Like I was hovering between who I used to be and who I was becoming. Freedom has a funny way of arriving quietly. It doesn't knock. It just slips in through the cracks and sits beside you, waiting to see if you'll acknowledge it. But fear came too, not the choking kind they used to create, but a quieter fear. The fear of the unknown. What would happen next? What would they say? Would they come after me? Would they try to twist the narrative again? My entire life had been shaped by reacting to them. Now I had to learn how to move without their shadow dictating every step. It was terrifying. But it was also exhilarating, like stepping out onto a balcony after years in a locked room. I unpacked slowly, not because I needed to, but because each shirt, each book, each small personal item felt like reclaiming pieces of myself. I remembered who I was before their expectations swallowed me whole. I remembered my own dreams, the ones they laughed at. I remembered that I used to love quiet nights, used to write, used to think freely without fear. Somewhere along the way I'd forgotten all of it. Later, I lay down on the unfamiliar couch, phone face down on the table beside me. I didn't check it. I didn't stare at the screen waiting for their reaction. For once, their voices didn't dictate my next move. The old version of me would have stayed awake all night, spiraling, imagining worst-case scenarios. But instead, exhaustion wrapped around me, gentle and steady. I fell asleep knowing something I'd never known before. I didn't lose a home that night. I walked away from a prison. And the panic waiting for me in the morning wouldn't be mine. The chain reaction began before sunrise, long before anyone realized what my quiet okay had set in motion. I didn't touch a single document. I didn't make a phone call. I didn't try to sabotage anything. All I did was step away, and the systems they built, the plans they hid, the paperwork they manipulated, all of it began unraveling on its own. That's the thing about houses built on lies. Remove one beam and the whole structure trembles. The first domino fell when the bank attempted to process the property documents my mother submitted. Normally, it would have gone through without much friction, if all owners had approved it. But this time my absence triggered a red flag. My name listed as co-owner suddenly mattered. The bank flagged the transfer for missing authorization from secondary title holder. That secondary title holder was me. Their entire renovation plan, loan application, and sale timeline froze instantly. Everything that had been set in motion, contractor deposits, scheduled inspections, even the appraisal, screeched to a halt. Meanwhile, the lawyer handling the estate trust tried contacting me for a required confirmation signature. When he couldn't reach me, he contacted my mother to ask where I was. And like always, she tried to speak on my behalf, insisting she could authorize things as the parent. But the trust wasn't built for parents. It was built for me. The lawyer declined her request and informed her that without my direct confirmation, nothing could proceed. No sale. No transfer. No access to the funds she'd already mentally spent. Then came the government notice. A pending tax document tied to the inherited property had been flagged because of an unresolved filing that required both owners present to complete it. The moment I wasn't there, it bounced back. Errors. Delays. Warnings. The kind that could turn into penalties if ignored. All this while my mother celebrated publicly, pretending everything was perfect. She never imagined the machinery beneath her feet had already begun grinding to a halt. And she definitely didn't expect my aunt's trust to activate a protection clause, one she'd forgotten existed. Because my contact information had changed recently, and because I hadn't confirmed any new instructions, the system automatically placed the trust under temporary lock to protect beneficiary interests. In simple terms, all money tied to the trust, all transactions connected to it, and all plans involving it were now frozen. Every piece of their carefully orchestrated plan relied on my silence, my compliance, my presence as a tool they could use. The moment I stepped outside that cycle, even for a single night, everything they'd built began collapsing. By 7 a.m. their phones were blowing up. By 8 a.m. their lawyer was emailing them urgently. By 9 a.m. contractors were canceling scheduled work. And by 10 a.m. a full-blown panic had begun. They had wanted me gone. But the universe and the law reminded them that I wasn't the weakest piece. I was the keystone. And removing me had consequences they never prepared for. I woke up to sunlight spilling through the blinds and a silence so calm it felt unreal. For a moment I forgot where I was. Then I rolled over, reached for my phone and saw the screen light up. 46 missed calls. Not texts. Not notifications. Calls. 46 of them. My stomach didn't drop. My heart didn't race. Instead, a strange stillness settled over me. I hadn't even listened to their messages yet, but I already knew what they contained. Panic, desperation, confusion. The very emotions they once used to control me were now ricocheting back at them. I opened the call log. Mom, 18 missed calls. My brother, 7 missed calls. My sister, 5 missed calls. Unknown numbers, 3. Their lawyer, 4. Family friends, 9. It was astonishing how quickly people who didn't need me suddenly forgot how to function without me. The first voicemail was my mother. Her voice had changed overnight, from icy certainty to frantic urgency. Call me back. No. This is important. No greeting. No apology. Just entitlement wrapped in panic. The next voicemail was louder. Why aren't you answering? This isn't a joke. We need to talk about something. Her voice cracked. She didn't mean to let it, but it did. My brother's messages were shorter, sharper. Look, I don't know what's happening, but you need to pick up. Mom's losing it. Translation: he was losing it. He always hated when things spun out of control. My sister tried a different approach, her tone sugary sweet. Hey, we might have misunderstood something. Can you just call us back? The sudden we told me everything. They'd held a meeting. They talked about me. They'd realized their celebration was premature. But the messages that interested me most were the ones from the unknown number. The first was stern. This is regarding your trust account. Please contact our office immediately. The second was more urgent. There are time-sensitive issues requiring your approval. Then came the third. This is Attorney Michael Hart. I've been contacted by your family this morning. I need to speak with you directly. It's serious. I set the phone down. Not because I was shaken, but because this was the first time in my life the problem wasn't mine to fix. They had kicked me out expecting silence. Instead, they woke up to consequences. 46 missed calls. And not one of them came from someone asking if I was okay. I finally played the last voicemail, the one from Attorney Michael Hart, while sitting on the edge of Lena's couch, still wrapped in the blanket from the night before. His voice was calm, steady, professional, but there was something underneath it, something tight. Lawyers don't panic unless there's a reason. Call me back as soon as possible, he said. Your family has contacted me this morning, and we have a serious problem. A serious problem. For once, those words weren't aimed at me. I dialed his number and he picked up on the first ring, like he'd been staring at his phone waiting. Thank you for calling, he said, relief flooding his voice. I've had quite a morning. I can imagine, I said, though honestly I couldn't. I still didn't know the extent of the damage. He cleared his throat. Your mother, your siblings, and 2 other relatives called me within the last hour. They are distressed. It appears they attempted to move forward on a series of property and trust decisions without your involvement. And now everything is frozen. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. The silence told him I already suspected as much. He continued, what your mother didn't understand is that, with your grandparents' estate structure and your aunt's trust integration, you hold a required position. Without your authorization, every pending action halts automatically. I could almost picture my mother pacing furiously, waving papers around, insisting she knew her rights. For years she believed authority came from volume and intimidation. But the law doesn't care who yells the loudest. The lawyer sighed. They're asking me to reach you because several deadlines were missed this morning. A contractor deposit bounced because the account was locked. A property document was rejected. And the trust system has triggered a verification hold. Triggered because I didn't approve anything, I said quietly. Exactly. His tone softened. And now they're facing potential penalties, delays, maybe an investigation if things aren't clarified soon. I leaned back against the couch. And why is this my problem? He paused. Not shocked. Just acknowledging the shift. Technically it isn't, he said. But they are insisting there must be some misunderstanding. Your mother claimed you stepped out without realizing your responsibilities. Her words. Responsibilities. That word made my jaw tighten. For years she used it to chain me. Duty, obligation, family loyalty. Always wrapped in guilt, never in gratitude. What she doesn't understand, I said slowly, is that I didn't forget my responsibilities. I finally remembered which ones were actually mine. He let out a breath. I suspected as much. I could hear papers shifting on his desk. They're asking you to come in. Immediately. They're saying the situation is urgent. Urgent for them. Not for me. I stood, walked to the window and watched cars pass on the street below. Tell them I'll think about it, I said. The lawyer hesitated. Is that wise? A small smile tugged at my lips. It's perfectly wise, I said. For the first time in my life I'm deciding on my terms. And for the first time in theirs. They had no choice but to wait. By noon, the group chat my family always used for birthdays and holiday plans suddenly came alive. Messages firing one after another like sparks from a dying wire. I didn't open it, but the previews told me everything. Family meeting now. Emergency. You need to come. This concerns all of us. They spoke to me the way someone speaks to a fire extinguisher, only when the flames are too high to ignore. I didn't respond. Silence has a way of making guilty people louder. 30 minutes later, my sister sent a photo. The entire family gathered in the living room. My mother at the center, arms crossed tightly. My brother pacing. 2 aunts whispering. Even my uncle, the one who never showed up unless money was involved, sat on the edge of the sofa, hands clasped like they were praying. They looked like a board of directors preparing to fire a CEO. Except this time the CEO owned half the company. My phone buzzed again. This time my mother called through video. I didn't pick up, but the thumbnail image showed her face tight with frustration. The confident woman from last night's celebration had vanished. In her place was someone cornered, someone scrambling to maintain control of a narrative slipping through her fingers. Another call came, my brother. I ignored it. Then my sister. Then my mother again. Finally another message popped up. We need to talk. This is serious. Come home. Home. The word hit differently now. That place wasn't home anymore. It was a headquarters, a stage, a place where they rehearsed their performances and expected me to play the quiet supporting role. My phone vibrated again, this time a voice note. Against my better judgment I listened. My mother's voice cracked. I don't know what you're thinking you're doing, but everything is falling apart. You don't understand the consequences of your actions. We need you here. You need to sign things. You're making this harder than it needs to be. There it was, the desperation wrapped in accusation. They weren't worried about me. They were worried about themselves. About deadlines. About legal complications. About money. About losing control. Second voice jumped in. My aunt. Softer, almost pleading. Sweetheart, just come talk. We can fix this as a family. A family that had thrown me out 12 hours earlier. I placed the phone on the table and leaned back. Their panic wasn't mine to absorb anymore. Their meeting wasn't my crisis to solve. Their consequences weren't my burden to carry. For years they summoned me like a tool. But now, they could sit in that living room and stare at each other all they wanted. The one person they needed wasn't coming. It didn't take long for their tone to change. Panic only works for so long before manipulators switch to their next weapon. Affection. Fake affection. Strategic affection. The kind they only use when fear stops working. By late afternoon, the messages coming in didn't sound like the same people who kicked me out with a 9-word voicemail. They sounded rehearsed. Sweet. Soft. Like they'd held another meeting and agreed on a new script. The first was from my sister. Hey, can we just talk? I think Mom didn't mean what she said yesterday. She was emotional. You know how she gets. Suddenly, the woman who delivered cold commands was emotional. Suddenly, her cruelty had an explanation. Suddenly, the blame was being spread thin like butter. Just enough to make it easy to swallow if I wasn't paying attention. Then my brother tried. He never apologized growing up, not once, but now his text read, "I'm sorry if things got out of hand. You're still family. Can we meet?" The word, if, sat there like poison. Things got out of hand. Not because of them. Not because they chose to remove me. No, because things mysteriously spiraled on their own. Convenient. The best message came from my mother. It was a single paragraph, but you could practically hear each word being selected like she was arranging flowers for guests to admire. "Sweetheart, I'm sorry. We want you home. Families argue. Families say things they don't mean. But our love never changes. Please come back so we can start fresh." Start fresh. Translation: come back and fix the mess we made. Come back so you can sign the papers we need. Come back so we can pretend nothing happened and you'll fall in line like always. What they didn't know was that I could hear the tension underneath the sweetness. The cracks in her voice when she said love in a follow-up voicemail. The slight impatience when she repeated, "Call me back. Please call me back." Their kindness wasn't born from guilt. It was born from necessity. They weren't sorry they hurt me. They were sorry their plan collapsed. By evening, the tone softened even more. My aunt sent a message with old photos. Me as a child, family vacations, birthdays. "See? We've always been close." Emotional blackmail disguised as nostalgia. My mother sent a heart emoji. My sister called me my baby, like I was 5 again. Their words were sugary. Their intentions were sour. They didn't want reconciliation. They wanted restoration, of control, of access, of the power they thought they still had over me. But they were far too late. The sweetness couldn't hide the truth anymore. I had finally tasted freedom. And I wasn't going back for bitterness disguised as love. I didn't plan on going. I didn't plan on seeing them. But when Attorney Hart called again that night, his voice even tighter than before, and said, "They're escalating the situation and false statements are being made on your behalf," I realized something important. Silence protects you until someone starts rewriting your story. So the next morning I walked into my mother's house. Once my home, now just a building with too many memories, and found all of them gathered exactly as I expected. My mother in the center of the room, posture rigid. My siblings flanking her. 2 aunts on the sofa. Even my uncle pretending to look concerned. The moment I stepped inside, every conversation died mid-sentence. My mother was the first to speak. "There you are." Like she was talking to a child who'd wandered too far from the yard. Like she hadn't kicked me out less than 48 hours earlier. I didn't sit. I stayed standing. That alone shook her. "Let's get one thing straight," I said softly. "I'm not here because you called. I'm here because lying to a lawyer has legal consequences." My brother scoffed. "We're not lying. You're blowing things out of proportion." I pulled my phone out. "Really?" I tapped play. The room filled with the sound of my mother's voicemail. "You're out. Don't come back. We're moving on without you." Her face drained. My aunts exchanged glances. My sister swallowed hard. "Let's start with that," I said. "You told the lawyer I left out of anger. A choice. Not that you removed me from the family." My mother straightened. "We didn't remove you. We were upset." "No." I kept my voice calm. Controlled. Firm. "You issued a decision. And now you're dealing with what that decision triggered." She opened her mouth again, but I cut her off. "And since we're discussing honesty, let's talk about these." I dropped a folder on the coffee table. The exact documents they tried to slip past me. Incomplete forms. Altered dates. A missing disclosure page. Signatures that weren't mine. My uncle cursed under his breath. My sister gasped. My brother took a step back. "Did you really think I wouldn't notice?" I asked quietly. "You needed my approval. My signature. My consent. And instead of asking, you planned around me like I was an obstacle, then removed me when I didn't comply." My mother's voice cracked. "We were trying to help the family. You're being dramatic." "Help the family or help yourself?" I asked. "Because this," I tapped the folder, "is fraud. And you know it." Silence hit the room like a gust of wind. My mother's eyes filled with a mixture of fear and fury. "You wouldn't ruin us," she whispered. I met her gaze. "You ruined this yourself. I'm just refusing to clean it up for you." For the first time in my life they were speechless. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't the quiet one. I wasn't the obedient one. I wasn't the weak one. I was the one holding the truth. And they had nothing left to hide behind. For a long moment no one breathed. My mother stared at the folder as if it might burst into flames. My siblings shifted nervously. My uncle rubbed his temples like he had suddenly developed a migraine. They weren't afraid of me, they were afraid of what I finally represented. Control. Something they'd assumed I would never claim. My mother was the first to speak, her voice trembling but trying desperately to sound authoritative. "All right," she said, forcing a tight smile. "Let's talk. Clearly there have been misunderstandings." There was again misunderstandings. Their favorite word for we got caught. "No," I said, taking a seat on the armchair, deliberately placing myself above them. "We're not discussing misunderstandings. We're discussing boundaries. Starting with mine." My brother crossed his arms. "You can't just dictate terms." I raised an eyebrow. "Why? Isn't that what you've all done my entire life?" He went quiet. I opened the folder again and slid one document forward. First, the property. It stays exactly as it is. No sale. No renovation. No transfer. Not unless I approve it, and right now I don't. My mother inhaled sharply. "But we already have people lined up." "And that's not my problem," I said calmly. "You made decisions without me. Now you deal with the consequences without me." My aunts whispered among themselves, but I continued before they could interrupt. "Second, the trust stays locked until I say otherwise. I'm not signing anything. I'm not approving anything. I'm not granting access to funds simply because you suddenly remembered I exist." My sister looked like she wanted to cry. "We just thought." "I know what you thought," I said gently but firmly. "You thought I was still the version of me who wouldn't question you. The one who would bend, break, shrink. That version is gone." I leaned forward, voice steady. "Third, and this is final, you stop using the word family as a leash. You don't get to kick me out one night and summon me the next. If you want a relationship with me, it will be because you respect me, not because you need something from me." My mother's composure finally cracked. "You're punishing us." I shook my head. "No. I'm protecting myself. Something you should have done for me a long time ago." The room went still again. They weren't angry now. They weren't loud. They were simply exposed. For the first time they saw me as someone they couldn't manipulate. Someone they couldn't guilt. Someone who had walked into the room with more power than any of them expected. "So," I said, standing, "those are my terms." My mother clenched her jaw. "And if we don't agree?" I met her eyes without flinching. "Then you get nothing." I walked out of that house without looking back. The door clicked shut behind me, soft and unremarkable, but it felt like the loudest sound I'd ever heard. Not because it closed on them, but because it opened something in me. The air outside felt different. Lighter, clearer, real. For the first time in years I wasn't carrying their expectations, their guilt, or their chaos on my shoulders. All I carried was myself, and that was finally enough. As I got into my car, my phone buzzed again. I didn't check it. I didn't need to. Whatever messages they were sending now, anger, bargaining, guilt, tears, none of it belonged to me anymore. Their emotions were their responsibility. Their decisions were their burden. Their consequences were their own. I had spent my entire life being the one who absorbed everything. Now I was returning what never should have been mine. Back at the studio apartment, Lena hugged me tight. "You look different," she said softly. And she was right. Something inside me had shifted. I wasn't trembling. I wasn't second-guessing myself. I wasn't shrinking to fit someone else's comfort. I was standing in my own space, breathing my own air, making my own choices. Freedom didn't feel like rebellion. Felt like finally coming home to myself. Over the next few days the calls slowed. The messages softened. Eventually the silence returned, not as a punishment but as peace. I met with Attorney Hart again, this time on my terms. We discussed the trust, the property, the legal protections I hadn't known I was entitled to. He shook his head at one point and said, "You handled this better than most people ever could." I didn't feel triumphant. I felt whole. I got a small job near Lena's place. Nothing special, but enough to start fresh. Enough to remind myself I didn't need the family's approval or their money to exist. I reconnected with friends I had drifted from, I took long walks. I slept deeply. I began remembering dreams I'd abandoned years ago, like they'd been stored safely somewhere waiting for me to return. Weeks later, my mother sent one final message, short, tired, resigned. If you ever want to come home, the door is open. I stared at it for a long moment. Then I deleted it. Because I finally understood something they never taught me. Home is not where you are controlled. Home is not where you are tolerated. Home is not where love comes with conditions. Home is where you can breathe. And I had found mine. Far away from the house that tried to break me, and closer than ever to the version of myself I was always meant to become.